Great. Yeah, thank you. And one of the things, as you can tell with Discipline Agile, is there are a lot of acronyms, and not all of them are easy to say. They don't just roll off the tongue easily, unfortunately. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and I will get right into sharing my screen and getting on with at least the presentation portion. All right. Yes, as Mindy covered, um, I'm the founder of Process Mentors. We're an authorized training partner with PMI, as well as not only delivering a lot of the PMI certification training, but we have a lot of our own training that kind of focuses in the Discipline Agile space. I won't go through just. I've got all the certifications in DA and other industry ones, lots in Scrum and being an SPC with SAFe. And the majority of what I focus my time on is I do about a third of my time in doing private and public delivery of training. The rest is spent coaching, and my primary focus is on value stream consulting, which is tonight's topic that I'm going to cover with you. And from a sort of an agenda perspective, there's really just three key areas that I'm going to focus on. And the first one is I'll just kind of set the stage and talk a little bit about, from a DA perspective, from a Discipline Agile perspective, what a value stream is. And then I'll tie that into two really key parts of the Discipline Agile value Stream Consultant course and certification and body of knowledge. The first one is the minimum business increment, or MBI. And the next one is how the MBI helps to bring to life and enables making significant improvements in value streams, the idealized value stream. And when I get into this part, it's not an ideal value stream, it's an idealized value stream. And there's a difference there. It's how we look at going from an idea, whether that's coming from a customer or it's a need that's been identified by a stakeholder, out in the business side of the equation, and how that goes from that ideation through portfolio management, how the decision is made to put an investment to actually get that next bit of value that can be realized by a customer, whether that be an internal customer or an external customer. That's going to be the big focus in the second part of the presentation. And I've got roughly somewhere around 45 minutes or so of content, and then there's plenty of time for questions and a bit of interaction. So, from a value stream perspective, just getting going with the definition of what that is. So, a value stream is a set of actions that takes place to add value to a customer from the initial request through realization of value by the customer. So value streams always start and end with the customer, although that can be internal or external. And organizations can have tens, hundreds, even thousands of value streams. Right? So value streams just exist in organizations. It's how we are able to get new functionality, new enhancements, new things to our customers, and they realize value from that. And again, that can be external, right? The customers, if we're a for-profit company, how we generate revenue and hopefully get profit from that, as well as internal, right? The systems and the value that we deliver to our internal customers. So what I'd like to do is just start off with a very sort of generic example and try and tie it into something that we all hopefully have had some experience with. Right now, I'm using part of what this product line and the value that's delivered through Microsoft. Right, so Microsoft has Office 365, right? My company purchased a license for me, and I've got Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, OneNote, Outlook, OneDrive, and Skype. And so these products form a product line, or it's a product that I've purchased, and the enhancements that are regularly rolled out, I'm getting value from, right? I'm using PowerPoint right now to be able to deliver this presentation to you. But there's other value streams, right? Windows 10, we've got, Home, Pro, Pro for workstations, and, Azure, and on, right? Microsoft has quite a few value streams, quite a few ways that they're delivering a service or a product to customers. So let's take a look at just Microsoft Office, and let's think through some of the precursors of what I'm going to cover in the MBI and the idealized value stream. And I do see, out in attendance, so I do see Steve. Steve, good to see you. And Steve's been hearing some of this. I'm actually delivering a value stream consultant course this week, and Steve's a participant. So Steve, you're going to get to hear some of what I've been talking about all week. So from a functionality perspective, right, we've got teams, a team at a minimum that is maintaining and enhancing each one of these products. Now, these are big products. Obviously, there's going to be multiple teams that Microsoft has that's doing this, but I'm going to kind of keep some of the examples pretty simple. So one example I like to use is just, new slide transition. It's functionality that is in PowerPoint. And for a PowerPoint delivery team to make an enhancement, the first time they added slide transition functionality, or when they do an update and we get one or more new slide transitions. And maybe some of you can remember, if you're users of PowerPoint, where it was just like, hey, they added something that looks like a conveyor belt and your slide can actually move and it looks like it's moving on a conveyor belt. Well, that's not the same functionality we would have in Outlook, right, as an email application. So the team that is delivering enhancements or fixing quality issues in PowerPoint can do that from a single product perspective, and again, very simplistically, a single team perspective. But now I like to look at something like spelling and grammar checking. And this functionality is something that is available across all of these products, right? So you're typing something into a text box in PowerPoint, and the spelling and grammar checking, if you have it turned on, right, is going to let you know, hey, you got a misspelled word, or there's a grammar issue, or what have you. And it's the same thing if you're in Word, right? So if you're you've got a Word document open and you're typing. So when there's a new enhancement, like let's say Microsoft acquires Grammarly. Grammarly is an add-in right now. And it's like, hey, Grammarly works better than our grammar checking. So we're going to now have that functionality, our internal spelling and grammar functionality, enhanced. But now we're going to have to make sure that that enhancement is being rolled out and consistent across multiple products. And if we have, again, one or more teams that are responsible for maintaining and enhancing Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, and so forth. So now we've got a little bit different of a situation. We have potentially more dependencies, more coordination that needs to be done. Sometimes this is done pretty effectively in organizations. Sometimes it's not done at all, right? So that's kind of the precursor of getting in. I've got a company previous environment that I've worked in, and that's what I'm going to use as some of the other examples as I get into now MBIs and get into the idealized value stream. So the MBI, from a how does it help solve some of the challenges that we see in practice between slide enhancement functionality and then something that's cutting across all of those products. Well, the MBI is one of the most important additions, at least in my opinion, into Discipline Agile in recent years, or, again, in comparison to all the other content that's in there. And for those of you that don't have a good understanding or background of Discipline Agile has been around since 2012. It was originally released by IBM. It was a combination of the Rational Unified Process, the Open Unified Process that was part of the Eclipse Foundation framework, open source community, right, where there were a lot of thought leaders that were contributing to the Open Unified Process. There was IBM's Agile at Scale, amongst other things that were blended together, aggregated together to originally come out with Discipline Agile Delivery. That evolved from a delivery framework into a toolkit. Years passed, it evolved, lots of more content, lots of more usage out in the world. And 2 years ago, PMI acquired the intellectual property of Discipline Agile. At the same time, they acquired a company called NetObjectives. And Discipline Agile had a value stream layer. So it had portfolio management and product management and program management guidance already. But NetObjectives had a more significant focus on value stream management. And it was a really great fit. And that was the beginning of what we're seeing here, the minimum business increment, the idealized value stream, and the disciplined agile value consultant approach. So MBIs are a key enabler of improving the flow of value delivery from a value stream. It is one of the things that is very unique and one of the things that really helps to deliver the next smallest quantity of value that can be realized by a customer. So here's the thing though, is that some of the attributes of MBI, what does make it different is, so the MBI is a strategy for identifying what that next smallest bit of value is that a customer can benefit from. But here's where it starts to get a little bit different. So it's a container of information, and it's a bridge from a communication perspective between the business side and what we consider to be the implementation side. Right, where we're going to bring strategies and investments into fruition. And it includes identifying the value-adding, flow-oriented activities from the development value stream. Right? So a agile delivery team, a disciplined agile delivery team, that's going to be doing the enhancements in a product is one of the things that we would find in the MBI at a very high level. It's a scope container of what we're going to do to provide that value. But the other thing that we've got in the MBI in this approach is it's not done in isolation. We have the operational value stream and the support value stream that's included in this container. For example, one of the organizations that we've spent a lot of time in as a company, and I've personally spent a lot of time in, is a product company. They rarely make any enhancements to their customer-facing sales portals without some level of advertising. So their marketing department, which is part of the supporting value stream, needs to be coordinating those enhancements with their advertising so that the value that we're putting out and the return on that investment can actually be realized. Value is realized by our customers. The organization gets a return on its investment, and hopefully as quick as possible, right? We hit our break-even point, and then we're generating revenue, or we got cost avoidance, decreasing customer acquisition costs, or any of the things that we might consider from a business value perspective. But that's a really big difference in so many of the approaches from an agile perspective that are out in the marketplace, is this idea that we need to identify all the things. Now, sometimes there might not be something required, value-adding activities from a team or an individual in a supporting value stream. Operational value stream, there's almost always at least a small amount of work because somebody's got to be able to support that. I'm not talking about just IT operations, the support of the product. I'm talking about how our customers of an organization are actually then going to see and realize that new functionality. So the MBI, the minimum business increment, helps us to focus on what the next smallest thing we can do that provides value to a customer. And that's a huge difference, right? We oftentimes have conditioned our stakeholders, especially, and I'm going to cover this, is our annual budgeting cycle, where they're going to ask for everything they can possibly think of. And what we want to be able to do is use a strategy like the MBI to not have them perceive this as they're going to be getting less. What we're going to do is we're going to get them value out sooner, right? So this is an enabler to delivering value to our customers more frequently. And by doing that, well, we're going to get feedback quicker, feedback from the market. Should we keep doing more of this functionality? Have we done enough, right? Is there something more important that we could be doing, something that would be more valuable? So it ensures completeness to deliver that value. Again, it's not just the development teams. It's just not the IT aspect. I mean, unless you're in an organization, either an employee or you're a contractor, consultant, supporting an organization that's a software development company, so their product is software. Other organizations are IT-enabled organizations, and there's a lot of focus on the IT area when it comes to Agile. So from a DA perspective, we've always had guidance that we want Agile at scale. We want everyone in the organization to get the benefit of using an Agile approach, right? Whether that's an iterative approach or it's a flow-based approach, right? Lots of options in Discipline Agile for that. But when it comes to delivering value, especially to our customers, we need to be thinking beyond just the development value stream. Easier to sequence the work as the identified increments of the smallest thing we can do. So yeah, I mean, when we have something that's smaller, I can estimate what I'm going to be able to do tomorrow, right? I have a number of things on my calendar, like probably everybody in attendance has. And I can size that work. I can understand what it's going to take to get done versus what I'm going to be doing in the second quarter of next year. That's a much bigger thing that I'd be trying to size and get a handle on. So easier to sequence the work, easier to see progress with that work, easier to get feedback on that work. Another thing is, right, understand the capacity of the people that will do the work, starting it and completing it, right? So here we've got work and process management, right? We want to make sure that we're not starting something unless we have a good level of confidence we can complete it. So we don't want, again, our Microsoft PowerPoint team working on spelling and grammar checking. They're going to get their work done. And the Word team is not going to get that done for another 3 months or another 6 months. So there's the aging of the work the PowerPoint team did. We're not going to release that. So that's, whether it's feature toggling, dark release, whatever. So it's just going to sit there and potentially become a bit stale. So the other thing is providing clarity on what to align around. So MBIs through the idealized value stream provide a way to have strategic alignment, a plumb line to our strategies that are decomposed down to the next smallest thing we can do that's going to add value to a customer. So now I'd like to talk about one of the things that I feel is very important and a problem that MBIs can solve, focusing now just on the development value stream. So I'm not leaving out the supporting or the operational, but I want to set the stage for how using this strategy can solve a very common problem at a lot of organizations. So I'm going to start off with a value stream that includes a number of products. So we have a direct-to-consumer sales portal, we've got a marketing platform, we have an inventory management, product fulfillment, and a innovation platform. And if we take a look at a typical annual budgeting process, right, we're gonna be doing that somewhere around this time period, right? Normally in that sort of end of the year, October, November, we're going to be making some decisions of what projects get approved, what scopes of work for the next year. So, well, what happens? What happens is that we have all of these ideas that either get, brought to some level of business case or project charter or however the ask is that gets included to be then submitted for consideration as we're getting closer and closer until we get into this annual budgeting process. And what we typically see is, big projects, small projects, medium projects. We have all these projects that then are approved out of the amount of money that's going to be invested for this, this value stream, this product line. And we're going to have that ready to get going typically when we get into January of the next year. So if we now kind of take a look at how this is going to sort of play out, oftentimes we get into the January, maybe early February timeframe, and it's like gold star. We've kicked off 100, we've kicked off 150 projects. All these projects, right? And I like to, if we're coming in and doing work for a customer around that time, it's like, well, how many have you finished? None? Like, no, hey, there's a certain level of comfort in our culture that if you have a project and that project gets kicked off, even if it's going to take all year to get it, you're comfortable that at least you're going to get something at some point. So, big project, right? Our direct-to-consumer sales portal. Yeah, big 12-month long project. Lots of functionality, right? Lots of enhancements. We've conditioned our stakeholders that they're going to ask at this time of the year and aggregate a bunch of stuff together. They're not going to get an opportunity again. So all these enhancements, sure, all this new functionality is within this product. But oftentimes it's very disjointed, or in some ways, a lot of times it's unrelated. It's in the product, but from a customer journey perspective, they're not going to traverse through all whatever dozen or more features that I've got listed here. And we're going to see that project over project, right? We're going to have all these projects that are funded. We're going to have projects that are a lot of them kicking off at the beginning of the year, and some of them might be staggered. Maybe there's some carryover work from the previous year. And so now I'm going to take you back to be thinking about the situation I started with. So we have enhancements from a team that's in one of the products, and we have enhancements that the spelling and grammar checker across multiple products. So here's one of the techniques that I've used many times. I like to take a look at some of the projects that have been done in a value stream and say, look, what are some of the things that were required for a customer to actually get value? So if we have some enhancements to the way the customer is going to interact with our sales portal, and we have to make a change in our inventory management system, our fulfillment system, right? How we're injecting content that's coming maybe from a marketing platform. Yeah. So if we're going to have a customer to get value out of any of this, and it's dependent on big blue project, right, direct to consumer sales at the top there getting done, we're going to be waiting all year long. Or we're going to have some functionality that's been rolled out and maybe it's not really doing anything. Or maybe it's causing another issue. Maybe there's a customer service issue that we're introducing by doing something like this. So what if we took a look at just what I circled and we put that into a container? Right, so 3 features and 1 feature with all these features, right? So all this is what's required for a customer to get value. This is an MBI. This is a minimum business increment. Now this is one that actually is more complex. It's multiple enhancements, and it's enhancements that are across multiple products and multiple teams that are doing that work. But if we're able to do this and release it, well, we're going to get some benefit from doing that. For one, right, our customers can start using that functionality and maybe sell more product, generate more transactions, right? Maybe we're alleviating some form of risk, or making sure if we've got, we're in a regulated industry, we're a financial institution, we're going to stay in compliance, right? Maybe we're able to keep up with our competition. Oh, yeah, so maybe the competition rolled something out, like, whoa, it's going to take us 12 months to do that. But now we can do it in a much shorter period if we put that all into a small package, and it's the smallest thing we can do, we can release, and there's going to be value from it. So it's this approach, it's this that makes such a difference. So we've got all of our ideas, right? We got all the ideas coming through, and if we still go through an annual budgeting process, what we want to be doing is we want to then capture this as a minimum business increment. And again, some might be small. It might be just one of the light bulbs that's an MBI. It could be 2 of the light bulbs, right? 2 light bulbs in the same product. It could be 1 light bulb from product 1, 1 light bulb from number 2, right? The idea here is that each one of all the ideas that were out there, we're looking at what needs to be done for those light bulbs to be providing value to our customer, again, internal or external. And by doing that, right, what we're able to do with this approach, right, so now we're going to move into January, we've adopted the MBI approach. We're going to be able to deliver value a lot sooner. Maybe this is all that we need to do, right? Maybe we don't need to do some of the other work because, hey, we put this out, we had high confidence it was going to, again, generate more revenue, sell more product. We have a new product, we're rolling out new product that we're selling. Nobody's buying it. So, of course, we have other things we can look at. Did we coordinate with the supporting value stream? Did, again, our marketing campaign, is there somebody out there selling it? Is there good awareness of this? Or we can say, gosh, look, we did that. If we can get a little bit more of this functionality out versus some of the other things we were planning to do in that 12-month-long project, see, we can make more informed decisions on the next thing we're potentially going to do. Now, as we move beyond the annual budgeting cycle, and we start to take a look at maybe, we can still go through an annual budgeting cycle, especially if you're a publicly traded company, or it's hard to change that, right? But we can change how we make decisions around what we're going to fund. Because if we're funding everything during that time period, we're setting expectations. Yeah, we might be able to change those or whatever, but that's a little bit harder to do typically in practice. But if we say, hey, we're going to use something out of the discipline Agile value stream management approach, we're going to look at an event called value flow planning. We're going to look ahead to the next quarter and look at all these small boxes, right? These small quantities of work that are these minimum business increments, kind of fit them together. So that's something else that I like to talk about. I call that MBI Tetris. It's kind of fitting all these things together and again, looking at the possibilities of what we can potentially deliver next. So MBI, it is a strategy for identifying the smallest amount of value that a customer can benefit from. So they're going to be different, just like user stories. We have some user stories that are epics. They're huge. They're really complex. We got to break them down a little bit. And then when we have a story that is the largest, most complicated thing that a team can do, right? That's one end of the spectrum. Another one is, hey, it's a, if we're using story points and a Fibonacci sequence, it's a 1 or it's a 2 or a 3, right? It's really small. So one end of the spectrum, less complex, right? Maybe it's an enhancement to a single product by one development team, minimal impacts or changes to operations. And we have a complex MBI, right? The other end of the spectrum. 2 or more products need to be enhanced. 2 or more teams are involved. We do have in our value creation structure options within Discipline Agile's value stream management space. We have something called the Focus Solution Team. It's a way to be able to form a slightly larger team that has the skills and experience across a product stack. Again, across a value stream of all those products to be able to take on a sequence of MBIs. But outside of that, more complexity. We've got multiple enhancements, multiple products, multiple teams doing that work, plus something like significant changes to operations or supporting value stream areas that are going to be contributing to this value being delivered. So in DA, for those of you that don't have much awareness of what that is, DA is based on making decisions with lots of options. So, if you have one option, you don't have any options. If you have 2 choices, you kind of have a dilemma, right? 3 or more choices, then you really get into options, and DA has a lot of options for things. And I'm trying to stress a point that I'll show you one approach to capturing information in a business canvas style format. It's one we've used a lot with customers. It's one that I personally also like, but there's lots of different ways that you can go about doing this. So it's business canvas here. We have bits of information, right? We have this container of information that we've identified. So I'll walk you through an example of a complicated MBI. So the first thing is we've got strategic alignment with this approach, and it's kind of the chicken and the egg situation. So I'm going to talk about MBIs. I'm going to talk about the strategic alignment, that then I'm going to actually show you how we do that in our idealized value stream. So the first thing is that we've got a strategic objective, right? And these are typically set. These are the big things on a roadmap that might be like that 3-year roadmap or 5-year roadmap. In this particular case, this organization had 10 of them. And the value stream that I'll use in part of our example was contributing to achieving 3 of them. So compound annual growth rate, this was very large company, so 3.25% compound annual growth rate was a pretty significant improvement. So these outcomes then are decomposed into initiatives. And initiatives are typically pretty big, 6 months, maybe 12 months, 18 months, right? I mean, it's to be able to get an increase in a particular product category of 48%, again, compound annual growth rate. There's a fair amount of things that are going to need to happen to contribute to hitting something like that. One of them, just one out of the many that had been identified, this minimum business increment was to develop a global ultra-premium product microsite with what was called a very special VIP-specific user interface. So if you think about a lot of companies, right, I mean, PMI being what? PMI's got PMI.org, and then there's multiple microsites. So you can go to the Discipline Agile microsite. It's the same colors and a lot, same font or whatever, but it is a different look and feel than other microsites within the PMI.org website. And that's the equivalent of what this is, right? So this was a direct-to-consumer sales portal, but now we're looking at very, very expensive on a per-product purchase that had a different type of customer, different price point, different types of options to purchase some of these very limited, very reserved products versus the other end of the spectrum, right? So instead of a $8 to $15 product, you might be talking about a $500 to $5,000 product. So it had a different look and feel, different bit of functionality in this microsite. So the next thing in one of the very important aspects of the MBI is the enhancements across the product or products, and in this case, there were multiple products that needed enhancement, as well as the other value streams that were going to contribute to value-adding activities. So here's a list of features, right? And there was some additional supporting context that we can have in addition to what's in the MBI. Personas, customer journey mapping, the types of things that in DA we call an explicit list. So yeah, if we're using user stories and we're putting those on a backlog, we might have data requirements, or we might have business rules. We might have things that maybe more than one story is going to trigger or initiate. Kind of similar here. We have some things that were applicable to this MBI plus a number of the others. So additional supporting information. But what I want to focus on here is we've got feature level requirements in our products, as well as things that need to happen from the operational and the support value stream. So again, the bottom one, the team brand ambassadors, right? So this was a team in the marketing area responsible for the release of this microsite. Digital assets, print assets, lots of different types of sponsorship, events, concerts, that type of stuff, right? It's a product company, so I mean, they get the word out. Operational value stream as well. There was a change because when somebody needed support for these really expensive products, well, there was a change in the customer support model for that. Again, kind of like, hey, I do pre-pandemic, I used to do quite a bit of fly. And so I had a pretty good level of status with one of the airlines. Well, I didn't, the number I called, I would typically, within 2 or 3 rings, somebody would pick up the call and and help me out, versus, some of the other airlines that I would occasionally travel that I have no status on, and I would just be calling and could be an hour before somebody talked to me, right? So a big change in the operational value stream that if we didn't have that, we might not be successful or anywhere near successful as we could with what was being desired as an outcome from this MBI. So what markets? Well, all global markets, but we do have a notation here that this particular company is a global company. So we North America and Latin America, we had Europe, and we had, Asian Pacific region, right? All these other markets that had additional MBIs, right? I mentioned there were a sequence of them that were needed to fulfill this initiative or to help support the initiative. And those were coming later that we were going to see some tailoring for each specific market. And we had personas, right? We had personas. So we had a pretty good understanding of the type of customer that would be interacting with this functionality that we were going to be providing. So another thing that we need to be taking a look at, who's going to do the work? Right, so from a program management perspective, right, program management looking at how all the pieces are going to come together, as well as who's going to do the work. Do they have the capacity? Because if we don't have the right capacity at the right points in time, we shouldn't be pulling this work, right? The whole idea of the minimum business increments, lots of different sizes and levels of complexity. We don't want to pull this into the work stream, even if it's, really important, and can't get it done, right? That would go against sort of the mantra of Lean, which is start finishing work and stop starting work, right? So we might be able to do something else that we could get done until we have all of the capacity of the people that need to do the work. That doesn't mean they're all starting on day one, like, hey, we're going to pull this MBI and start working on every single team and every single person in the operation or support. Everybody on January 3rd needs to be available. That's not what this means. It just means that for how long we think it's going to take to get this work done at the right points in time, those people with their skills and their experience, or the budget that needs to be available, again, marketing and advertising is typically, there's money that needs to be spent, it's available. So the other thing is, how are we going to measure this, right? Measuring our outcomes is critical, right? How do we know we're seeing value realized? Right? It's not just, hey, development team, like, pushed it out into production, gold star, and everybody celebrates. Right? That's not how we make money if we're a for-profit company. That stuff goes out, and then are we seeing results from that? So in this case, increase Ultra Premium, this is Tier 9 product sales by $28 million by fiscal year 2022, and increase net sales by 2 particular categories by half year 2022. Right. So we were looking for some and this was going to give us insight, right? We're going to be able to make a more informed decision on what we might do next. It's just going to take some time to see if this is happening. We're looking to see how this is going, and should we continue to do more work in the ultra premium space, or is it like, look, we're not anywhere making the sales we thought. right? Do some analysis, see what's going on. But hey, is there something else we can be doing? Is there a different type of product category, or can we just continue to augment the existing tiers of product that we've been selling quite well for some long period of time? So the other thing, are there delivery risks? Yeah, there was a significant dependency on there was a VIP program, but we needed to establish the very special VIP program. And this was well underway. I mean, it was still a risk, and it was still captured here. But again, having a very specific look and feel and having some of the establishment of that very special VIP program was important to be able to launch this microsite. The other thing was operational value stream, the VCS team, needs to be established to service this, right? So there was a risk with that, right? Moving people into this, finding the right people to be able to do it. Again, if you think about it, not quite like a sommelier, right, where you've got somebody at that level of expertise, but somebody that understood these products enough to answer questions and to help either make the sale or, again, entice somebody to become a customer. And the last thing is just sizing, right? So just like we would size stories in this particular case, we did a very high level relative sizing of the work that was in the business backlog. Again, very similarly. Now we had to have the right people. Again, we had the kind of the doers of the work, right? We had our product owner, and in Discipline Agile, we have an architecture owner role. So the development teams, the teams in the development value stream, were the ones that were contributing to the sizing, as well as the people in the supporting and operational value stream. So, right, adding all of the value-adding activities, right, identifying that is very important. And it's very important to do that. Now, I'm focusing on some of these graphics that are in the development value stream because otherwise they just get to be very huge and really tiny. And I see everybody start kind of leaning into their screen because you can't see it. But we need to make sure when we're doing this, we are looking beyond just the IT space. So, MBI solves the problem of communication between the business and the development, operations, and supporting value streams. So the next thing that I'm going to take us into now is what's called the idealized value stream. And again, I start off by just making, there is a distinction. This is not like the ideal. We're trying to fit every value stream in every organization into this construct. It's a way, though, to identify how we're going from an idea, all the way through something that'll be of value to our customers. And so that is what we're looking at here. So the definition of value streams I start off with is they start and they end with a customer. So whether the idea has a direct customer request, or we've got, again, experts in the business side, right? We got subject matter experts, market experts, people that are representing, these personas we've identified. We have our idea, and that comes in to the beginning, right, of our idealized value stream. So we have a business side, right? And we're going to start off with portfolio management. So the first thing is this idea big or small, right? Up to a point. Again, a tiny little story. We're not going to run through this. We're going to have ways to handle sort of the big rocks, which is what I'm going to kind of look at here, versus small rocks versus, teeny tiny, grains of sand, so to speak. So for the things that we're flowing through this, for one, we want to make sure we've got strategic alignment. And you'll see as we get into this, because this gets us into an intake management approach, that this is where so many organizations suffer, right? They don't have a good intake management process. They don't have it. Everybody just wants their own work. Hey, you got a whole bunch of business units and everybody's got their own P&L. Everybody's going to be competing for their work to get done. And they're going to think it's the most important thing because it's tied to their P&L. Versus a holistic approach where we have strategic alignment through objectives we're trying to achieve. Now, these can also be tied to investment pillars, right? One of the customers that I'm spending a fair amount of time with, they have 4 pillars, right? 4 very significant things that organization is actually, it's in business, or it's in action for those 4 specific things. So here's an example from that MBI, right? Here's our strategic objective: increase direct-to-consumer sales by 3.25% compound annual growth rate. So there's lots of things to hit this type of an increase, right? Direct-to-consumer sales through a web portal, direct-to-consumer sales in the brick-and-mortar locations, right? All of the channels that this organization has to sell its product direct-to-consumer is going to need to be contributing to this amount of growth. So we decompose that, right? And again, this organization had 10 of these objectives. This value stream, the direct-to-consumer sales value stream, was only contributing to 3 of them. So this is broken down into initiatives. So for this value stream, there were multiple initiatives. The initiative that I showed you in the MBI example is, we want to increase sales by 48% compound annual growth for ultra premium product. There was also another tier of product, right? This was tier 9. There was a tier 0 product that was also brand new, or a tier of products that was brand new. There were also some pretty significant growths that from a sales perspective, were contributing through these other initiatives to be able to help the strategic outcome, right? So if we break it down like this, I mean, it makes it pretty simple and straightforward. I mean, you really start to be able to paint the picture of what is contributing to what and what needs to be done. So then we get into these next smallest bits of work we can do. These MBI. This was a complicated one. This was a big amount of work. Develop the global ultra premium product microsite. Yeah, that's a big, complicated MBI. Now, the other MBIs, the ones that were tailoring this microsite for one or more of the other geographic regions, I mean, one of those MBIs could have been quite small in comparison, right? It could have just been some of the things that for that particular geography, we were going to make some changes because that resonated well and it was just more in line with the personas for that particular market, right? So we can have lots of different amounts of size and duration because of that complexity. So what we would end up with is we'd end up with strategies, and we've got a bunch of initiatives that have been identified, and then all of our MBIs, as well as MVPs, right? We would still be doing innovation work, but I'm going to kind of keep this simple in this webinar that we have all these MBIs. And what we would see is the strategy stuff rarely changes, right? Unless there's a really big impact to something within our organization or our customer base, whatever. Now maybe this changed for everybody back last year, right, during the pandemic, but these rarely change. Now, initiatives infrequently change, right? Because I mean those are things that again they span a bigger quantity of time. It's kind of like a program that's going to have multiple projects, and and they'll change, but infrequently. MBIs, we should see some amount of change. Right? We're getting feedback from the marketplace much sooner if it's the smallest thing we can do. Maybe we've got an MBI that we're going to be able to release in a month. Great. I mean, that's going to inform us on what we should do next. So what happens is, right, so we've got our left side of this idealized value stream, right, the portfolio man, we end up with a business backlog. Just like we might have a product backlog, I mean, hey, it's pretty easy. I mean, you can have a couple of brainstorming sessions. You can end up with hundreds of stories because it doesn't take too long to do that. We can identify all of these MBIs. Right? And I'm not talking about the level of depth in the example that I showed you. That was an MBI that was ready to implement. Right? That'd be like a story that has met a definition of ready, lots of acceptance criteria, lots of discussion that's happened between the team and the product owner and anyone else that's being involved, subject matter experts from the business or, somebody from, shared services. Very similar approach with what's in the business backlog. Very low level of investment for those MBIs that are further down or at the bottom. Could be big. We might need to split some of them, just like story splitting. But here's the other thing that's really important for this approach, right? The product management part. So those MBIs, those next smallest bits of value that we can deliver to our customer, right, as part of the discovery workflow, is where we're putting a more investment of time. Right? Through discussion, through the written word, right, where we would have a definition of ready that we're all going to agree on. We need adequate discussion, just like a story would, and we need adequate written text and some of the supporting content so that when we've got those MBIs that are ready for implementation, they're sitting in this intake queue. And this intake queue is the bridge between business or strategies and the implementation side, right? So they're there and they're not pulled out of that intake queue until we have a high level of confidence we're actually ready to start that work and we're going to be able to get that work done. Again, it's not just the IT work, or it's not just the IT work of one of the teams. If it's a 2 or more teams, 2 or more products that need to be enhanced. So again, just a quick flash, right? Here's the MBI, right? This complicated one, right? And it's got our development, it's got our operational, and it's got our supporting. So here's how that looks. Now, this is a slight variation of what's in the Discipline Agile Value Stream Consultant material. Right? So what I've done is, instead of just having a development value stream focus and talking about attending to the operational and the supporting value stream, I'm actually going to show that graphically. All right, so what I'm going to show is that we've got not always, but in this case, we've got value-adding activities from development, operational, and supporting that has to happen. And it's when all that comes together, and that's part of the program management aspect, that we're then, right, at the end of being able to deliver this out into a production environment, right, the operationalization of it, which also includes, and oftentimes, right, people that are like out in the field, right, other locations, or again, the customer support people, not the people that are just supporting, again, defects, bugs that are in our IT products, the actual, customer-facing support. So that's one of the other really significant differences here, is that we want to be able to pull the work from that intake queue with good alignment and coordination across the three value streams in a complex situation like this. And I got another one I'll show you that's just a tiny bit of development work and a tiny bit of operational support work. But some of the things that'll leave you just from a thought-provoking perspective is, hey, this organization I mentioned rarely did anything that was a significant enhancement to a customer-facing sales portal without some level of advertising and marketing. I mean, they knew. I mean, it was a data-driven organization. They knew that's how they would be successful. So the money that they were spending in the IT area, which, let's face it, that's not typically inexpensive, right? The way they would be able to get the results they were after, the forecast of those outcomes that they were hoping for, is that they had to work from a marketing and advertising perspective. So the marketing team might not need to be available again on the very first day that the development team is pulling this work in and getting their work going. But think about if you are looking at the customer journey, and somebody in marketing could actually see how a customer would be interacting with this functionality. They can fine-tune their marketing campaign or how they're going to advertise it. They're going to have some awareness of this. We're going to know that, hey, look, from a timing perspective, like, yeah, our marketing's doing pretty good, and hey, we've got people that are moving into the support area for this, whatever learning they need, or just, again, maybe there were some new hires, whatever the case was, that was going to be able to have the support for the customers that would be interacting with this functionality. So another example on the other end of the spectrum is this, right? Another MBI. Right, that last one, hey, maybe that took 3 months or 4 months. I mean, that was a lot of work. Right? Maybe we've got one that we get out in 3 or 4 weeks. Right, so we have an enhancement to a product that one team is doing. Hey, maybe this is one new slide transition, or a couple of slide transitions, right, to PowerPoint. And so we have some work in the development value stream, and then there's minimal, like, hey, so we need some training. We got to make sure people are aware that they can support this. Hey, this is coming. We're not going to blindside you. We're not going to just be rolling functionality out. Just because we're getting better from a delivery perspective, we got more DevOps, more automation, that type of stuff. We're providing visibility upstream and downstream of what we're doing. And I like to also say it's not just upstream and downstream, it's above and below. Right? Most organizations, if they've got a lot of value streams, some of those value streams are going to intersect, right, forming like a value network. We need to make sure that there's good awareness of, hey, what we're doing here, it's not going to impact something somewhere else that's going to cause a problem. So that is a small part of the Discipline Agile Value Stream Management Consultant approach. Right? We've got a lot of things, a lot of options that bring this into fruition. Last thing I'll say is on this idealized value stream, like where it came from. So Net Objectives, over the course of almost 20 years, right, had come up with different approaches that were working, right? Customers they were working with. And the founder of Net Objectives, who was once the company was acquired, he was the thought leader of Agile at Scale, Al Shalloway. So Al not only through his company had a fair amount of data and experience with their customers, but Al is somebody that's been an industry thought leader for a very long time. And so through speaking with other consultants, other people that were speaking at conferences, right, year after year after year, and being able to identify, right, again, from a more idealized perspective, how we can go from an idea to the realization of value. So the other thing was Al led the development of this approach, right? All this great intellectual property that they brought over from the acquisition of Net Objectives. But there was an alpha program that had roughly 60 consultants across the world that do work in this space, you know, the value stream space. And it wasn't just DA stuff. I mean, there were people that had vast experience with SAFe and one or two large-scale Scrum, like some of the other leading approaches in the marketplace, that all, you know, provided feedback or contributed, hey, this would work. And so the backdrop, this idealized value stream, and then a way that we do assessment based on competencies that really represent, if you know, if you're at least doing these, you know, these competencies, or you get, you know, a certain level of maturity with them, like, you know, some really great stuff is going to potentially happen versus, you know, if you're not doing them, yeah, probably not good stuff or possibly bad stuff is what's unfolding. But that's also just a little bit of the background of where this came from and how it's been proven out to work. So with that, I will say it's question time. What I'll do is I will let me stop my share and yeah. Any questions? Anything else that I can answer? Go into any more depth on?
Feel free to unmute if you have more, or you can type your questions in the chat box, whichever you're more comfortable doing.
All right, by lack of questions and everybody's still here, I'm thinking, gosh, did I cover it in that much detail or depth? There's got to be some questions. Ask me something, challenge something that's in here. Again, part of the Discipline Agile Value Stream Consultant, again, body of knowledge and approach is, everything is challengeable, right? I mean, if you see something like that would never work, let's talk about it, right? Or does this just resonate? It's like, wow, yeah. I mean, I was mentioning that again. I'm teaching this course. I'm teaching this course with Al Shalloway this week. Very, very rare opportunity where, you know, Al, this is the first public delivery of the Value Stream Consultant course that he's delivering. I've got another one I'm doing early in December. Al and I will take a look at, you know, going into next year and see how many he might also. I'm hoping for maybe like one a month for a while, because Al is just an absolute wealth of knowledge. The courses, you can go to processmentors.com. That's the company website, the company I work for. We've got our Value Stream Consultant courses that are there, as well as, you know, other courses in DA. We'll probably have within the next week or two. I feel extremely fortunate. Al and I have been for a long time collaborating quite a bit together, and we're doing even more of that now. Like I said, Al was the thought leader of Agile at Scale at the PMI, did some really amazing things there, and is continuing to support DA, but he's now created a new company called Success Engineering that we've partnered with, and yeah, we'll be doing some more of the deliveries together.
I think I don't make any question because it's been a blast. You know, this is it's something that's great. I just need to process all that information. You know, I'm a product owner, so I leave every day some of these stuff. But it's the first time I saw something so holistic. So I need to process all these. I don't know even what could I ask, you know? I really appreciate the fact that you're sharing this.
Yeah, thank you. You know, even just if you want a little more information on this, I've got a whole bunch of articles, newsletters I've published on LinkedIn as articles, and then on our website that I go through like 12 different aspects of the value stream management approach. And it is extremely holistic, and that's one of the things that makes this such a unique approach. And the other thing is that you don't have to adopt all of it, right? That's a really big part of what we teach in the course. And a lot of what we teach in the course is trying to help you figure out how to solve challenges, right? It's not just like, hey, here's one way to do it. It's here's how you can start looking at some of the challenges. And one of the things that I've spoken on before is most agile transformations, you're brought in from a PMO within the IT organization and it's focused on the teams, right? And then maybe, we need to do some automation. We're going to get into sort of the DevOps space and, the way the work's being pushed on teams, or we have this ineffective, intake process, and we do some work there. So what we do with this approach is we actually create an improvement backlog based off of that idealized value stream. It's a very simple process, right? Relatively simple. It's very simplistic in the way we execute it, and it provides an opportunity to identify candidate improvement areas. And then we figure out, like, well, if we make an improvement in one area, great, it's going to get us some value. And if we make an improvement, right, so portfolio management or something that we're doing sort of upstream, and hey, we could make some efficiency improvements at the team level, and the way that we're going to coordinate and start working a little bit better with these, supporting our operational value streams. So it's a way to start forming a backlog, an improvement backlog, that we can make decisions on. Again, how much change can we bring in? Are we ready for that change? Is it in scope for us right now? How's the culture of the organization going to react to it? And so we're able to make decisions on how to best move a transformation forward. And it's not just focused, like often is the case. And I know I've been part of it. I've led a lot of agile transformations that are focused on the team level, and then the team level only. One of the quotes that we've seen a few times in the DAVSC courses, right? How are we making teams much more efficient at delivering something that should have never been done in the first place? So we're trying to focus on doing the things of the highest value and having a way to actually measure that that's the highest value.
We do have a couple of questions in here.
Let's assume the operations dev support are different teams. What if the teams take different amounts of time to complete the MBI? What does the other team do while waiting? Oh, excellent question, Jerome. Yeah, which is often the case, right? So what I didn't have time to get into is a few different techniques for this. One of the techniques is what we call value flow planning. And there's a few different ways value flow planning can go about. I've got a technique that I've sort of evolved over pre-DA days. That I call look ahead value flow planning, and I call it MBI Tetris. And the idea here is that we're able to take a look at the sort of the amount of capacity needed in the people that are going to contribute to the value in each MBI. And MBIs are the big rocks. So I mean, I've got some ways to show that. As we're sort of, again, I call it Tetris because we're kind of moving some visual representations. I like to use Miro. So Miro is one of the platforms that we use a lot. We recommend to our customers that they use. But if it's, Mural or Power Noodle or I don't know, there's a couple dozen types of these virtual whiteboards, these ever expanding canvases. And so we're able to sort of take a look at what we might be doing over the next quarter. And some of that looking ahead is teams that are starting at different points, right? Again, it's the coordination of when do they need to start to not introduce unnecessary risk, or, now we've got a dependency on something that we might not going to have in the time that we need. And of course, things are going to unfold in practice, but we're doing some upfront planning to see what's potentially possible, again, and how we can move some things around based on that capacity. So that's part of the tie-in to program management, the capacity that's available within the value stream to be able to do this. The other thing is that we might say, oh, this MBI is really important, but we have a team that's finishing something else up. We're not pulling them off of that. So maybe we can shift something in the MBI, out to the right a little bit in time, and another team can fill in doing something else. Maybe they can just take on a bunch of stories that, again, is not a new feature, not a new capability, but it's like the small rocks, the small stuff that they can do. And so we've got planning events that we can take a look at how we can potentially move what we're potentially going to do around to fill up a certain amount of the capacity we'd have, again, in a quarter. We're not going to fill it up anywhere near to 100% because it's a recipe for disaster. We need to have enough buffer and enough room for the stuff that we don't know is going to happen, right? Some things might take a little bit longer. What happens if we've got a few people that are critical and I don't know, they're out ill, right? That's some of what, from a planning perspective, we're going to, again, figure out from a capacity perspective and what we can possibly do. The other thing is that with DA, right, we want potentially, things being done on a certain cadence because we want to integrate frequently. We want to be able to do things on a regular basis in very frequent time periods. But we don't have to have everybody doing the same approach, right? We don't have a prescriptive framework within DA. What we have is we have choices, and we have then ways that we can coordinate the work. So whether one team is doing an iterative approach, another team is doing a flow-based approach, you've got people in the supporting value stream that they have their way of doing work, right? That might not have any look and feel to Agile at all, which maybe through this process they would pick up on some practices and techniques that would help them be more efficient. But we have ways that we can accommodate that. Again, I can, with visuals and stuff, I can typically go into a lot more depth and use some examples. But yeah, it's we want to make sure we've got available capacity to do the work, and we can take advantage of, again, some of the open time periods to do other stuff we can fit in. What else do we have? C. Lynch, is that Chastain Lynch, all the way from Alaska?
Alaska.
Good to see you, Chastain. So what are some of the challenges of doing value stream planning mapping in this new remote world? Yeah, so there are challenges, but then there are also some possible solutions. So using, again, something like Miro, for those of you that, if there's anybody out there that hasn't used Miro, I'd go and take a look at it. Again, it's a virtual collaboration platform that allows us to alleviate challenges where we've got large spans of time zones, for instance. We can get people together as best we can, where some people it might be early in the morning, some people it might be later. In our VSC course this week, we've got people on the Pacific Coast. It's a 4 a.m. start time for them. Chastain actually took this course. I want to say it was 3:30 a.m. for Chastain when she took it.
Right, yep.
And we have people this time. We have 3 people in Australia. When Chastain took it, we had people in New Zealand, right? So I mean, we really, in these courses, I feel very fortunate. I get people from all over the world that take them and really make a commitment from a time perspective. And why I'm bringing that to light a little bit is with technology these days, especially something like these virtual canvases, we can do a bit of work and we can leave the work open on these boards and asynchronously let people work on it. Right, and then come back together the next day or 3 days later or whatever the right time period is to get past some of these big room planning events that it's like everybody's got to be available and everybody for those 8 hours is going to be in the same. And yeah, and some people, right, it's going to be super early and they're going to be tired. It's super late for others. And that's going to be a detriment. So we do have approaches. We have options in this approach to be able to accommodate that. The other thing that we like to do is we do like to spread these types of planning, especially look ahead planning if we're going to be doing it for like a time period across a quarter. Right, quarter is probably the furthest we'd want to do this out in the future on a regular basis. What we want to do is we also want to split that across 2 days. Right, that's one of the recommendations that we have in the course is that just by doing some of it and sleeping on it and coming back with some fresh thoughts, letting it sink in, right? Letting that kind of noodle in the back of your thoughts, right? We oftentimes then see more creativity, or again, it's like sometimes like, whoa, that's never going to work. And you come back the next day and you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, I thought about it for a little bit. Yeah, it looks like that might work pretty well. Or, oh, hey, I thought of this. Or, hey, we really could split that MBI into 2 MBIs, right? Look, I've thought of a way that this will still add value to our customers. And here's what I'm thinking, right? So lots of things come out of just having some of these techniques. So yeah, great question. Oh, one last thing I'll say
different ways of doing value stream mapping, and so I really like this MPI approach. So a lot of times the value stream mapping takes up maybe like 2 whole days, or maybe even 3. How long does it take with the MBI approach?
Yeah, so another excellent question. So the thing, and I'm not still sharing. Well, anyway, so you think about the
I can stop
idealized
sharing if you'd like me to.
That's okay. I think
Okay.
I'll see if I can answer this, Catherine. If not, I'll go back to one of the slides. But so here's the thing with this idealized value stream as a backdrop to an assessment approach we do. So we've got these things that I mentioned called competencies, and we start with 36 of them. Now that's not all of them. Right? There's some that you can identify based on some pre-engagement work, or it's an existing environment that customer you're working in, or your employee of the company. We might split some out or put some additional ones on. But these 36 are the ones that time and time again, if you do those, you're typically going to be having a very efficient and effective value stream. Right? You're not going to be significantly hampered by things from a flow perspective. So what we do is we can do that in a short period of time and have an improvement backlog. And maybe we'll do some value stream mapping in particular areas to get a little bit more granularity. But like you said, I mean, value stream mapping can be extremely beneficial, but it is expensive and it's time consuming. And if you're really, if you're trying to go from an idea all the way through the realization of that, and some of that is going to be like, hey, an idea has been submitted, we've thought about it, and you got to wait until you go through annual budgeting and planning because you're actually timing how long the value-adding activities, right? Those activities that you're touching that versus all the time it's waiting. That's going to take a lot of time and a lot of investment potentially. So value stream mapping is used a bit more sparingly with this approach. It's an option we can use, but it's balanced against, if we can do something that provides us, again, we were just talking about this in class today, 80% of the value of in-depth value stream mapping in 20% of the time or less, we can get the majority of the benefit. Those are some of the techniques that we'll look at because it's faster. It's going to get us the majority of the way there. We're going to be able to start making potentially some improvements, or at least socializing those improvements and getting an understanding of, is this something we can do? Is there enough support for it? Is there enough buy-in? Is there enough investment? Do we need to do training or coaching? Is there some tooling we got to change? All the things that possibly could come up. So this approach, this idealized value stream, and then using MBIs is a much smaller amount of time to get going. Now, I'm not saying it's easy by any stretch. I mean, I've been talking about a customer I've been working with, and they're going much more significantly into this. But it's I've been working with them for a while. There are a number of improvements that need to be made to get to the point where we're going to be transitioning to this idea of a focused solution team, using MBIs. That's been combined with a bunch of other changes that have had to happen. So very beneficial, but I don't want to say, oh, this is the silver bullet everybody's been looking for. It's like, hey, we can do this over the course of a couple of weeks, because unless it's a teeny tiny company, that's not the case. But this compared to, think about, some of the competing approaches in the marketplace. SAFE, you're all in. I'm an SPC. I understand SAFE. I've done work with organizations that have adopted SAFE. And, that's you're going from essential SAFE all the way up to, when you get into the portfolio layer, there's a lot in that implementation roadmap you got to do. So this is much quicker.
And who are the stakeholders that you usually involve with if you do introduce MBI approach in the value stream mapping? I'm selfishly asking because I'm going to introduce value stream mapping in my company, and it's a Fortune 10 company. And we're adapting SAFE.
Yeah, most of the time, this is something typically you're going to need to get executive buy-in, because this is going to be a pretty significant change. So now the level of executive buy-in, is going to vary. Again, is this a business unit you're going to possibly be doing it in? Is it in a particular product line? Is it, so again, it varies. If you're in a Fortune, 10 company, or even a Fortune 50 company, yeah, you might not be getting approval from a CEO or somebody at that level, but you're going to need some level of executive buy-in for this, because it is a pretty significant change. The thing about how to introduce this, though, and going back to one of the slides that I had, where we're not trying to paint the picture that people are getting less. And that's a really important takeaway, is part of the, I don't want to say selling, but part of the awareness raising of this approach is that it's how we can deliver value sooner. And by doing that, we get all these benefits that Agile's been promising, right, since the past decade or 2 decades or 2.5 decades now. Right, that's so maybe you can get some buy-in at the product management space. Maybe you've got portfolio managers, but at some point, early on, you would need to be also getting some support from somebody that is in a significant decision-making capacity.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm working on that business case right now to get all buy-ins.
Awesome. Well, good luck with that. Yeah, and hopefully, some what you saw here, you can fold some ideas in, and
Definitely, I'm planning to contact you.
all right. Awesome.